Hi everyone, I'm Jack Crawford, and it's time to review Dunk Lords by Storyfort. This is a special game because a couple decades ago we had this tradition of arcade sports games, but recently that seems to have died completely, and every sports game has to be a super serious simulation. As far as I'm concerned, that doesn't make for interesting games at all. I've played plenty of sports simulation games, and they leave no impression on me, whereas I have very fond memories of games like NFL Blitz 99, SSX Tricky, Super Mario Strikers. Dunk Lords is basketball presented as a beat 'em up. It's even further from reality than those other games I mentioned, even more hilarious, and even more fun. A game of Dunk Lords consists of four 90-second quarters. The first quarter is the most like real-world basketball, but already there are ridiculous dunks, dashes, uppercuts, and character-specific special abilities. But things only escalate from there, because between quarters you buy items from a shop, which add to the insanity. There is some really wild stuff in there, like the construction zoners, which raise a fence in front of you when you jump, or the barnstormers, which create slow-moving tornadoes when you uppercut. Toward the end of a game, it's typically pretty chaotic, but I'm really impressed with the balance they struck. It would have been easy to go too far and allow situations where it's impossible to tell what's going on. Plus, it's not so crazy that it loses what's good about basketball in the first place. There are obvious things that remain, like staying open for a pass, shuffling to get a rebound, but even some of the tactical decisions and potential plays resemble basketball tactics, at least a little bit. This game was designed by Andy Hull, who was previously lead programmer on the HD version of Spelunky, which is another game I love. And apparently Andy has used most of his time since Spelunky's release making Dunk Lords. It was apparently a 6-year project. This is not a super complicated or ambitious game in theory. It's basically NBA Jam, but more wacky. But having played quite a bit of it over the past month, I completely understand why it took so long. There's a level of design polish in this game that you do not see very often. Every one of the core abilities has a reason to exist and some interesting nuance to it. You have to constantly manage your energy, which is used for sprinting, dashing, dunking, and uppercutting. There's also no health bar. Getting hit drains your energy instead. Dunks are strongly encouraged, but they're pretty easily countered by uppercuts, and they take energy, so layups are still sometimes useful. It's hard to get the space to pull off an alley-oop, but good players will always look for the opportunity since it gives both you and your teammate a star to use for special moves. Of course, there are reasons to go for shots as well, and you often have to think quickly about the best way to use the available shot pads, which give you various bonuses like a star or extra money to spend at the shop. There are so many little details just in the basic mechanics that give the game depth, like how you can fade your shot in any direction, obviously good for avoiding straightforward blocks, but also situationally good for avoiding attacks from any direction. You can actually slightly adjust your position mid-uppercut as well, which is very satisfying when your target unexpectedly stops and takes a shot, and you can adjust and barely hit them. I like the decision to give you a star if you instantly block a shot. It's an extra bonus as a reward for anticipating that shot instead of just going for an uppercut. You can face away from your teammate for a higher pass. You can prevent swipes by quickly changing direction. You can pump fake or charge a special, then cancel it to bait your opponents. I could go on and on about all the smart design decisions, but the point is, the basic options are already really interesting. They give lots of space for you to build mechanical skill and situational awareness and game sense. And that's just the absolute basics. It gets much deeper and much funnier when you consider the variety in the characters and items. I will say the character balance could have been better. There's a pretty big gap between the top 3 and bottom 3 characters. Aside from that though, the character and item design is impressive. First of all because of how many characters and items there are with so little overlap. The vast majority of them have a strong identity that makes them unique and memorable. They all interact with the core mechanics in different interesting ways and change the game significantly. There are tons of surprising interactions between specific characters. For instance, it was surprising to discover that Gwen's ball of yarn makes her too tall to hit Frank with her ankle breakers attack. There are weird situations with a certain character on a certain stage, like how Abby's shot pads slide around with the junk on the floor on hip socket heights. 1,000 little details like these keep Dunk Lords feeling fresh every time you play, even after hundreds of games. And finally, the characters and items add more humor into the game. And there are actually lots of different types of humor in this game. There are the straightforward gags, like Frank putting someone in a jar of NBA Jam. These ensured that I never had a boring moment with Dunk Lords. For the first few hours, I was seeing gags like these constantly, and when the novelty finally wore off, I was already hooked on the gameplay. The goofy physics add some humor, like when the ball is bouncing around at light speed and no one can manage to get in the right spot to catch it, or when the Mondo magnet causes the ball to partially orbit around someone, then fly off in an unexpected direction. There are the moments that are funny in a somewhat frustrating way because of an item you weren't thinking about, like when the fan favorite pushes you around and leaves you uppercutting the air. There are also some subtler jokes in the game, stuff you might not notice at first. At some point, I saw Bagalov getting money when he used his monkey attack. At first I was confused, but it made me watch more closely and see that the monkey is actually uppercutting, and Bagalov had moneymakers which give you $50 when you uppercut an opponent. That is just something that I can't even explain to you why I love it so much, but I do. There is so much soul in every corner of this game. You can really feel the passion behind this project. You can feel it in Laura Shigihara's soundtrack as well, which puts a kind of hip-hop spin on old-school video game music. The stage tracks often have 2 or 3 melodies in counterpoint, and the beats usually have a lot going on too. The result is that each stage has a fairly dense 90 seconds of music that holds up well to repeat listens, which is exactly what you want in an infinitely replayable game like this. It's just such a fun soundtrack, which also suits the game. There are some stylistic shifts that reflect the different stages, like the Botcourt Industries track, which has some strange mechanical sounds, and the Pirate Boss song, which is like a sea shanty. Unfortunately, it can be hard to appreciate how great the music is because it's muted temporarily during dunks, which is very often. I get the idea of wanting to highlight dunks, but it kind of ruins the flow of the music in my opinion. There are other issues with the audio, like generally low-quality sound effects and voice lines, and some sounds that weren't affected by the volume setting. I also had some occasional crashes, which contributed to the game feeling somewhat sloppy. I also think the visuals could have done more to add humor to the game. The art style kind of feels like the default option, and considering how many funny ideas are in the game, it seems like there was room to squeeze in some more visual gags. And I think more effort could have gone into the color palettes for the stages, making sure everything always looks nice and the characters always stand out as clearly as possible. These flaws don't hold the game back too much though. In fact, I think this would be a great game even if it were just the arcade mode, but there's also story mode and Gauntlet mode with leaderboards. The story is contrived to the point that it's funny. It feels like a parody of contrived game stories. It's clearly using any imaginable excuse to set up basketball games and to introduce all the characters and stages. It also has some parts that are extra chaotic, or you could say annoying, which I think is fine since it's a 1 or 2 time thing. If there were a stage in arcade mode like the last level of story mode, I would absolutely hate it, but as a special challenge, I enjoyed it. Gauntlet Mode is a set of 4 games where you're playing against the expert level AI, you can carry some items forward to future games, and you try to maximize your score, minimize the other team's score, and so on. We dove pretty deep into this in co-op. I tried as hard as I could to find completely overpowered strategies, and it seemed like everything was accounted for in the design. Instead, the more we played the game, the more minor things we discovered. Like the best way to counter a certain item, or good item synergies, or ways to occasionally manipulate the AI a little bit. All these small things that together make a huge difference. It felt like getting good at a really deep action game like Bayonetta or something. I don't think we're anywhere close to the skill cap either. There are plenty of techniques we haven't mastered that could make a big difference. I'm looking forward to seeing someone get 15,000 someday. There is a good bit of randomness to it, which is arguably less than ideal, but personally I like it. It seems to somehow balance itself out pretty well over the course of a full run, and makes it so the item purchasing choices are always interesting and never easy. There are minor issues, like I don't see the point of having frontrunners as an option here at all, and a couple items are maybe a bit too strong or a bit too weak for Gauntlet Mode specifically, but overall, Gauntlet Mode is a massive net positive. Because of Story Mode and Gauntlet Mode, I can 100% recommend this game to everyone, even if you're only going to be playing single player. Which unfortunately is probably true for many people since it's local multiplayer only and there happens to be a global pandemic happening at the moment. But you can use Steam Remote Play, which lets you stream the game to any of your Steam friends. Your mileage may vary with this, you might get some stuttering, but generally it works pretty well. Now, if I haven't given you enough reasons to buy this game yet, there are apparently 4 secret characters that no one has found, so you could be the one to find the secret characters. I enjoyed searching for them. I tried every weird, interesting thing I could think to try and found nothing, but as silly as this may sound, I don't mind at all, even if they end up being hidden in some terrible, stupid way. There aren't enough compelling mysteries in games, and this got me excited. It brought back the feeling of being a kid and hearing about obscure secrets in games and searching for them back before the internet ruined all of that. That said, hopefully someone will find them and tell me how to do it. Actually though, we should recreate that 90s experience by telling each other a bunch of fake secret character rumors. That would be pretty fun. Anyway, this is easily my favorite game of the year so far. I hope everyone plays it, and it's the beginning of a revival of sports games that are allowed to be fun. If you like fun, I highly recommend it. But also, if you like diving into a really tightly designed system and mastering it, figuring out all the intricacies that make it work, I highly recommend it. And I'm giving Dunk Lords an 8 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on this game, and let me know if you bought me on the Gauntlet Mode leaderboards. Check out my other videos if you haven't already, and thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.